Great.
Welcome to Office Hours, everyone. You'll note that my buddy and compatriot John Arms isn't with us this week, but we are well represented with the wonderful Lisa Hammett today. Lisa, how are you? Welcome.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm enjoying your beautiful view.
Oh yeah. Yes. Well, it's part of staying happy and healthy and managing stress to get away from the office a little bit. So I'm actually working from my cabin up north
Nice.
in Texas, just outside of Oklahoma, correct?
Yes, I'm north of Dallas. Yeah, about an hour from the Oklahoma border
Okay.
in McKinney, Texas. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, Lisa, thank you for joining us. And Lisa is a success coach helping stressed and burned out business owners and executives develop mental fitness, manage stress and anxiety, and get healthy. So I'd love to hear all kinds of stuff because we hear a lot of this from the fractional community and people that are CMOs, CFOs that are doing all kinds of work in multi-hats world. And a lot of my clients, a couple of which are online with us today, they're all working hard, and it's a weird space and it's a weird time. So, tell us more about how you help or what you do. And I'd actually love to hear a little bit more about your TED Talk and what you're going to be talking about at the end of next week, right?
Yes. August 26th, actually.
Spectacular.
So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do we de-stress? How do we handle all this?
So, well, I've got lots of tools in my tool belt, but I'm currently going through positive intelligence certification, and I have the capability to enroll clients through the program. And basically, it involves developing mental fitness.
Mhm.
What I love about it is, especially in the corporate sector, emotions can bubble up quickly, stressors can bubble up quickly. And, there's lots of great tried and true things like, oh, go, step outside, be active, meditate, do some yoga. Well, that's all wonderful. But when you're in the corporate space and you're about to go into a meeting or you're running between meetings, you can't very well do that. So mental fitness enables you to manage stress or any negative emotion in the moment. And it only takes between 10 and 15 seconds to start to activate that muscle. So it's pretty cool technique.
Perfect. So can you explain a little bit more about what some of the technique is and how that works?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
For a embattled corporate executive, right? That maybe working from home with a puppy that may or may not be excitable, or kids that are running in and out of the office, right?
Right.
What are the first steps that you would take?
Okay, so the first thing is to quiet the negative side of your brain, which is the left analytical side of the brain. And you do that by engaging your senses.
Mhm.
And basically, what it involves is you could focus on something so intently for 10 to 15 seconds, like something that you could see. So where you're sitting, maybe you're looking at a reflection in your sliding glass door, and you're noticing how it's kind of, moving a little bit with the trees shifting, but you're looking at it so intently that colors, shapes, textures, reflections. And what that actually does is it quiets all that negative emotions that are residing in your left brain and enables you to shift your perspective to your positive right brain. So it sounds strange, I know, but there have been significant scientific studies on this, especially using MRI technology. And what it shows is that when you shift that focus from the negative to the positive, your brain changes. And they've captured this on film, and it's pretty remarkable. So I just illustrated sight, but you could do sense of touch. And a real easy one is like rubbing two fingertips together and really noticing how it feels. Like, are your fingertips smooth? Are they dry? What's the temperature of your fingertips? It's like a really mini meditation that you can do anywhere, or it could be something that you hear. And the good news is it takes about 10 to 15 seconds to actually shift that focus. And when you are in a more positive sage part of your brain,
Mhm.
you are better able to handle challenges and not overreact when, an escalation and some sort of corporate drama or something, a fire starts. You're able to be a little more even keel and just make a better educated thought. And, this can pertain to eating as well. If you're an emotional eater, it can shift that, where I just want to grab, a whole box of Oreos or whatever. And you can do that. And it just kind of refocuses your brain so that you can make a better choice, or maybe just forget about it altogether. So
Sure.
that's in a nutshell how it works.
Amazing. And I know that there's a process inside of that, and the sights or the touch or other common tenets of like just self-awareness and or working on meditation or other things like that. I know there's a lot of apps that are out there. I use Calm, or I have used Headspace in the past. Like, some of those are really cool. Are there any recommendations that you have for mental fitness for sure? And I also know that you had a pretty incredible life journey in your physical fitness as well. So how are you taking, give us that baseline for where you're taking the fitness, mental and personal, and kind of give us that baseline too.
Okay. So, when I went through burnout, just so a little bit about my journey, and it was in 2005, and I felt like I'd hit a wall, and I was at my heaviest weight, and I was on stomach medications. It was terrible. I mean, at one point I thought I had stomach cancer because I was so stressed out. And I left the corporate world and started my own business, which had stressors as well. But I started my wellness journey and I lost 65 pounds.
Wow.
So I've been health coaching since then. And, a lot of it just boils down to mindset. And mental fitness is kind of a version of that. But, it doesn't matter how good a program is. Like, if you want to lose weight, or if you want to get healthy, or just whatever it is, if you want to start an exercise regime, bottom line, if your head is not in the game, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I think it's very important to create a very strong mental picture of where you want to be. And what does that look like? If your goal is to get healthy, okay, so how are you going to feel? What are you going to be doing? Are there things that you're going to be doing then that you can't do now, or that you can do much better? How will you emotionally feel? How will other people respond to you? I mean, really similar to what pro athletes do before they go into a game. They're actually visualizing nailing a play, or an Olympic athlete. It's the same technique. And that is so important. And it takes some time to do that sometimes. That's why, I like the mental fitness, because it's kind of in the moment. But absolutely, taking the time to really create a strong mental picture, and then you can start working on building sustainable, healthy habits.
Absolutely. And would you have advice for folks that don't really know? Like, I think you kind of tipped on that a little bit. You didn't really know what was wrong, just that something was wrong, right? At the beginning. And so for folks that are extremely stressed out, or everybody, I think, in our lives right now are pretty overwhelmed with specific things, but also kind of leads to a general malaise. And so how do you start to identify that, or start to separate out those things so that you can start working on them?
That's a great question. And interestingly enough, I'm going to be talking about this in my TED Talk. But, there are subtle symptoms that start to come into play when you are stressed. And most individuals have some sort of stress on a daily basis. And stress isn't necessarily a bad thing,
Right.
Because if you're working towards a deadline, or you have a big project, it can be very motivating. But it can also be negative in the sense that these subtle symptoms will start to creep in. And it could be maybe starting with a slight headache that starts to build. It could be escalated breathing. It could be forgetfulness.
Mhm.
I mean, how many times do you like, oh gosh, I swear, if I didn't put it on a Post-it note, or if I
Right.
didn't put it in my phone, I'm not going to know,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And that is actually a sign of really starting to develop chronic stress.
Mhm.
And you need to heed those warning signs. And oftentimes we don't. We just brush them under the carpet. And then we don't do things like visualization or taking a walk or trying to relax, do things to help.
Mhm.
But because if that is not addressed, it will turn into chronic stress, which then can cause burnout and serious health issues like digestive issues like what I had, or escalated risk of heart attack and stroke. Some of my favorite symptoms are escalating the aging process,
Oh yeah. Ooh.
because oh yeah, we all want to look old, right? That's always such a fun thing. And weight gain is another thing, because studies have shown that when you're really stressed, your body goes into an overproduction of cortisol, which not only causes weight gain, but it also causes cravings for high fat, high calorie foods,
Sure.
which, so it's kind of a double whammy. You're eating the wrong things, and then cortisol is making you gain weight. So there's all these things. And it's really important to be present and start to just pay attention to these warning signs, and not brush them under the table, which is so hard. I know when you're in a high level corporate position, it's like, oh, I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time for this. I'm just going to pop some Advil and have a
Right.
cup of coffee and move on. And, you have to make the time to care for yourself, because if
Sure.
you don't, it can lead into serious problems.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. And do you think that for those type A driven folks that this is more possible or more likely to happen, or does it kind of happen for everyone where they can experience extreme stress, or is there one like kind of person that should really watch out for this?
That's an excellent question. The type A, the hyperachiever,
Mhm.
hyper vigilant, that's all of that is me
Right.
in a former
Right.
life.
Uh-huh.
Yes, because you're hardwired that way, and you can overcommit and just completely overschedule. Yes,
Mhm.
that could maybe escalate it. But I mean, it could be working parents trying to juggle work
Sure.
life balance,
Yep.
and then you throw a puppy in the mix, or,
Mhm.
where you have aging parents that all of a
Right.
sudden you're having to make very challenging decisions on their health care. And do they move in, or do we, move them somewhere? And then how do it's so many different things. So really anybody is susceptible. But yes, those who are very, very driven, type A,
Mhm.
it can happen more rapidly and maybe not be as sneaky as
Sure.
some of the other ones.
Right. Well, and for those driven folks, or really for anyone, I'm assuming that there's probably a number of other cues that are leading them to, maybe I should start looking at some alternative options, or start taking my health, physical and mental, very seriously. I'm assuming, if your spouse or significant others keeps looking at you and saying, "Are you okay?" Or
Mhm.
if you personally are experiencing, kind of that fog, or
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be a couple of things to watch out for. Are there other things to listen for from like your friends and relatives, or are there like other physical things that you should probably pay attention to?
Well, I think this kind of goes into the line of setting healthy boundaries. If you
Mm.
find that you're just running from one thing to another, and that it never seems to have enough time in the day,
Mhm.
that's a red flag right there.
Mhm.
If you are spending less and less time with those who are truly important to you,
Mhm.
okay, that might be another flag of where your life is really out of balance.
Right.
Unfortunately, in some cases, individuals will have a huge wake up call with an illness. They'll go to their doctor, and they'll find out that they have heart disease, or
Mhm.
they're on the verge of a stroke, or they have cancer, God forbid. So sometimes it takes a wake up call for
Right.
things to shift, but hopefully You would not let that happen. You know, a big one too is if you are having trouble sleeping,
Mhm.
or if you wake up in the middle of the night and your brain is just going.
Right. Yeah.
That's a big one as
Mhm.
well. Or if you wake up and you feel like, okay, well, I slept supposedly for 8
Mhm.
hours or 7 hours, but I wake up and I'm exhausted.
Mhm.
Well, you didn't sleep well,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So that's another
Right.
thing to think of.
So another key thing to look out for.
Mhm.
I love that. And for our audience, and again to the audience, I'll be turning on microphones in a moment. So if you have questions that you would like to ask of Lisa, this is going to be a perfect time. What common things, or let's flip to the other side. If you have someone in your life that you are pretty sure is experiencing a lot of this stress, and we want to be able to reach out and help them, how do you gently break that to them without perhaps having it explode for people that?
That is delicate,
Yeah.
because it's kind of this along the same lines. If somebody has a substance abuse problem, and
Mhm.
I'm not just saying drugs, it could be alcohol or, what
Right.
have you,
Yeah.
but they have to recognize that they have an issue, and it's really kind of subtly bringing to their attention that they have some pain points that
Mhm.
really need to be addressed. And it can be done in such a way where it's you're not saying, Dave, your eating is terrible.
Mhm.
And, what are you doing to your body? No, you wouldn't say something like that. You would be maybe
Right.
more subtle about, I don't know. It could even be something implied using yourself too, just saying, I really want to try to do a better job eating better, as you're saying
Mhm.
to
Right.
somebody
Right.
else.
Of course. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I just feel like I'm just not, so then it's kind of getting their insight and their buy-in. So it's
Mhm.
feeling like it's coming from them, because
Right.
the last thing you want to do is tell somebody that they have a problem,
Right.
because they won't
Mhm.
do anything about it. They have to be at a place.
Right. So if you just point out to your significant other perhaps that, hey, this is really screwy, you need to look at this, that's probably not going to be met very well.
No, probably not. And, we do this maybe even, we think that it's lovingly, just say, hey, I'm really worried about you.
Mhm.
You're doing this, this, and this. And I'm not saying don't approach somebody if they're worried about them, but that automatically puts somebody on the defensive,
Mhm.
you know? So, it could even just be asking certain questions
Sure.
for them. Just says, gosh, I know your schedule is really full at work. Is there something that maybe I could do to kind of help with that? I know I can't do your job, but how can I support you as your spouse,
Mhm.
to kind of help you in that regard, or
Yes. Okay.
something like that,
Right.
where it's coming a little more supportive, as opposed to, what, you have a huge problem, you need to fix it.
Right. It feels like the common thread is finding small little wedges that you can use to start being more aware or helping others achieve awareness, and
Yes.
then to just focus on that and get your space so
Mhm.
that you can start focusing on yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yep.
Well, I want to turn on our microphones here. So no pressure, but if you do want to join us and speak, you're welcome to ask Lisa any questions that you have. So Pam, if you have something that you'd like to ask of Lisa, or if other folks, I'm also cataloging and watching our broadcast on the Voyager U channel, and I'm looking for questions. I don't see any yet, but I think if you have specifics, this is a great time to do that, because this is intended to be a call-in podcast.
Hi, Pam.
As we go through, I think.
Okay, so I will.
Oh yeah, perfect. Hey, Pam.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah.
So at least in the beginning, you outlined a couple things to do to help your mind stop that racing, or do you have a touch and feel? But I assume you've got a whole host of different techniques that you recommend.
Absolutely. I mean, it could be something as simple as engaging any one of your senses. So sight, hearing, taste. Sometimes I'll do a grounding exercise with a warm cup of coffee because I love coffee. So, in the morning to kind of get me grounded for my day. Activity, if you can go out and take a 5-minute break, if you don't have time to go for a walk or go to the gym or whatever you like to do for activity, take a 5-minute break, set a timer, and just get up and take a break. Dave, you had mentioned like Headspace and the Calm app.
Yeah,
those are great. As well. There's it's really anything that is going to shift the negative emotions that are residing in your left brain. So music can be very therapeutic for some people. They can just put on headphones if they're working and they're like on a spreadsheet and they're trying to hit a deadline. Maybe it's sometimes putting classical music on in the background where it's not disruptive, but just kind of, quiets all that mental noise. So, petting a cat or a dog. I mean, studies have shown that people who have pets live 10 years longer typically, which is crazy to me, but they can transfer that energy. So these are just some. Does that help, Pam?
Yeah, that gives, there's a lot of different times throughout your day, whether it's the work day or if it's the wind down or the wind up on the way home. Just you're not always in the same space at the same time when you can get into that. I'm going to almost call it like a vicious circle, an endless loop sometimes of trying to solve a problem.
Right.
And you need to set it aside and just refresh. And I'm not always sitting at my desk to look out a window or, so having multiple options or techniques is good to know.
Good. Yeah. And take a break. If you're starting to feel stressed and overwhelmed, and if you're, not on a call and you can take, sometimes it's 5 minutes or it could be 2 minutes, that can actually help as well. So.
Amazing. Okay. Perfect.
Thanks.
You're
Great
welcome.
question, yeah. Lisa, I know that you got your first book coming out next, later on this month. And
in September, mid-September.
From Burnout to Best Life, correct?
Yes, correct.
Oh, tell us about it, because I want to know lots more. And I think the tangible thing that we can all get out of this is maybe to either get the book or subscribe or connect to get more touch points and to start carving out time for this work.
Yes, absolutely. So basically it integrates my journey and experience with burnout and teaches you how to go from a situation where oftentimes when you have reached burnout, you kind of feel hopeless. You feel like you've siloed yourself into a job that you might be highly skilled at and are making a lot of money, but you're miserable. You hate it. It's stressful, but you can't see beyond that. And it's really, first of all, getting you to start creating a vision for the future, and that it can be, regardless of your age and where you are in your career, you can make positive change. Now, with that said, I'm not a huge proponent of saying, okay, if you hate your job and you're miserable, quit a 6 or 7 figure income and just start your own business.
Right.
If you have the financial means to do that, absolutely, that's great. You need a business plan, and there's a lot of steps, before that. But, it's really creating awareness and knowing that, yes, you can start to dream and create that vision. And then from there, it's, how do you, create goals that are achievable? How do you create sustainable habits? And then there's the whole piece of mindset. Now, I didn't go into the positive intelligence aspect of it in the book. That'll probably be in my next book. But there is a great book from Shirzad Chamine that is called Positive Intelligence. And it talks a lot about, the mental fitness that I had shared earlier. And then in the book, I also share about how, to eat healthy and move your body and what's important and all that. So it's a really kind of a holistic wellness approach. Also talks about fears and, how that also not just fear, but forgiveness, how things like all these negative emotions can impact our behavior as well.
Mhm.
So that's what the book is about. And there will be a downloadable workbook that for anybody who purchases the book will be able to download a workbook. So really the intent of it is to understand that there's a pain point in your life that needs to be addressed. And at the end of each chapter, there are reflection questions, which will just get you kind of thinking about it, and then hopefully by the completion of the book, and I'm not saying every segment of it is going to apply to you, but you will recognize where the pain points are and what needs to be addressed and pointed in the right direction of where to get help.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the folks and for fractional executives again, which is a big part of our audience, folks that are working in, a lot of these folks, they sort of have 3 or 4 different jobs.
Mhm.
They're the CMO for 3 or 4 different businesses. And so for those folks, is there something that they can do to help, like just in the moment, to keep grounded? And or would you recommend any other practices like journaling or working with or talking with a coach like yourself? Are there any other tips or tricks for folks that are really just kind of grinding and
Yes.
there's no way out?
Yes. So the first thing, and I know people will probably roll their eyes when I say this, but the first thing is you have got to schedule some sort of self-care. It does not have to be at hours at a time.
Sure.
If you don't have time to go to the gym for an hour workout, or if you don't like going to the gym, don't go to the gym. But, maybe it's 10-minute increments throughout the day, but you have got to schedule it. And you can't say you're going to do it. You have to put it on your calendar and block it as you would a meeting. It is so important. And you have to make sure that you're getting a good night's rest. And I know that is challenging, especially when you're working so much. And if you are a hyperachiever and you're just going, sometimes it's hard to quiet the brain. So, the mental fitness that I had talked about, that's really great for quieting all that negative energy. Journaling is great as well. I'm glad you brought up journaling. And when I say journal, it doesn't have to make sense what you're putting down. It's almost like a brain dump. It's just whatever is coming into your brain, just write it down. It could be sentences, it could be words, it could be statements. It's just thoughts. And they don't even have to have a certain flow. Don't think of it as, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect like an author. No, all it is just getting a bunch of junk out of your brain. And the act of doing that oftentimes will quiet your brain from that constant chatter, because we have thousands and thousands of thoughts throughout the day. And if they're not managed, they can really cause a lot of stress.
Perfect.
I will share with you that my Fitbit has been wonderful for me. My company switched to a program where we're rewarded for hitting our walking goals.
Nice.
And one of those goals is a 30-minute walk every single day. I do it every day, and it gives you that like you said, that quiet time just to get out and walk. Plus there is goals where every hour walk so many steps. Yep. But it has, without really thinking about it, just being out there and doing that walking has been a really nice stress reliever. Not even realizing one had stress. I have just found it to be incredibly enjoyable.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the exercise one is a mood elevator. Studies have shown that. And then when you get outdoors, even if it's overcast, that also will elevate your mood. So, and again, it doesn't have to be for a long period of time. That's fantastic that you make the time for 30 minutes, because that can have substantial impact on your heart health and just your overall, endurance and flexibility. So that's amazing.
Wonderful. Are there any other like big tips that even might be kind of surprising to folks? Like I hear things about this, and I'm kind of a self-helpy kind of guy where I'm always listening to different podcasts and things that might have interesting or weird things on them. And one that I thought was really fascinating was the cold plunge, like just jumping into either a cold shower or jumping into a cold body of water, or even ice baths or something. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily something that everyone should do, but anything else like that might be super surprising to folks through your research and through your work?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of something that's just something like that. So I don't know if it's that drastic, but going back to activity. So there have been, and I did a blog post on this at one point, that sitting is the new cancer, and that it is actually more beneficial for you to move throughout the day than it is to have like a good solid workout first thing in the morning or even in the evening and then be pretty sedentary the rest of the day. Because after a while, our bodies and our organs actually start to go to sleep, and then they'll eventually shut down. So as an example, what happens to your digestion if you're very sedentary?
Slows down.
It slows way down, and that's it going to sleep. And then for those people who are really sedentary due to illness, it can cause major health problems. So the key is to get up and move throughout the day. One way to do that, drink a lot of water. I know you hear that all the time, but not only is it great for flushing out toxins and just it's great for your skin, it's great for your organs. You'll have to pee a lot, so you'll have to get up.
Yep.
So it's important as well. And then I could talk about all kinds of weird stuff about, should you have caffeine? Should you have sugar? All that kind of stuff as well. I don't know if you want me to go into that now, but
you're a coffee aficionado, and I am as well. So how is that? Is coffee okay?
Coffee is totally fine now, in moderation. I think the latest study that was from the Mayo Clinic was that you could have up to 4 cups per day, which that for me, that's a little much. I try to stick to 2, but they're big mugs. The thing is if you're starting to notice that your sleep is being impacted, or you're getting jittery, or, you're getting headaches, then you're probably having too much. But no, caffeine in moderation is fine. It's not a bad thing for you. It's actually, it can give you energy. And, oftentimes when people do get a headache, a lot of the Tylenol or whatever, it's laced, with some caffeine in it to actually help, so in moderation, it's okay. And that's the same with sugar too. I'm not going to say don't have it. Obviously, if you're diabetic and you're taking insulin, then you really should reduce it. But, I'm a proponent of everything in moderation, because if you're told that you can't have something, how does that make you feel?
I want more. Yes.
Exactly. You feel deprived, and then you might be able to sustain that for a short period of time, but then you're going to go overboard and just binge on it because you felt deprived. So, I call things like that last meal worthy. Like if you had the last meal on earth, what would you have? And if it's chocolate, if it's coffee, if it's an adult beverage now and again, if it's chips and queso, whatever it is that you like, then you need to figure out how you can incorporate that moderately into your diet, so that you don't feel deprived.
Sure. And how about for folks that maybe aren't that moderate, that want to move to moderation? How would you recommend they start edging that out and maybe not having 3 or 4 cocktails an evening, and down to maybe 1 a week?
You start small, because you can't go from 4 to 0. Again, it's all about deprivation. So, I'll use, well, it could be cocktails or it could be diet sodas, because I've had a lot of people, or just sodas in general,
Absolutely.
who love their sodas and they drink those all day long. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, so what can you supplement those with? So I'm not saying don't, drink them, but let's say you're having 6 a day. Okay, cut down to 4. Do that for a week, cut down to 4, then cut down to 2. And then, eventually, especially when you find replacement items that can satisfy, it gets easier. And once you start drinking less of something like that, you don't have the cravings that you had before. But you can't, it's like trying to quit smoking. I mean, some people do it, but oh my gosh, I don't know how they do it. That's so hard to go from smoking a pack a day to, not smoking at all, just quitting. It's a gradual process.
Sure. And some of those replacement techniques, I think, can be incredibly powerful. And especially if one of your emotional triggers, or one of the things that you do, is you want to try and self-soothe, maybe with a beverage or a treat or a snack, or, zoning out on social media, which is another thing that I'd love to talk about a little bit. How do you, is it just being mindful enough, or maybe even in your journal or something? Like, if you're eating too much, or if you're not doing it, just write down everything that you're eating, and that helps you be mindful, right? But then one of the things that I've actually found kind of useful is, instead, one of my big triggers is I just get bored and then I get hungry. And so instead of grabbing chips, I grab carrots, or, I just grab a handful of baby spinach and start munching away, right? So is it more helpful to be additive versus weaning things out, or do you have to have a balance of both of those?
That's a good question. You really have to have a balance, because it's one thing to replace like a high calorie snack with a healthy snack. That's really good. But if you're reaching for food when you're not hungry, you want to stop the behavior, because that's training bad behavior.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter if the replacement food is lower in calories or is healthy. You're not changing the behavior. You're just eating something that maybe is less calories. Now, with that said, there are times where that's just going to happen. And then when you are better prepared and you have the right things available, you are less inclined to reach for cookies or candy or, what have you. So kind of a balance.
Agreed. Okay. And that makes a lot of sense, because if you try to go all in on one thing, and especially if you're just like, well, I'm still going to eat just as much, pretty soon you're going to get bored with carrots.
Yeah, exactly.
You're back on it, or you're adding dip to your carrots or something, right?
Right. Ranch dip and yeah.
Be a little self-defeating.
Absolutely.
Let's switch gears for a little bit and talk about social media, because it's one of the things that people tend to do a lot. And I personally feel like the one of the worst things that we are all doing, and that we get pretty into, is just flooding ourselves with either conflict out of social media, because it's always us versus them, and it's that clickbait mentality of media organizations. But also just the itty bitty little dopamine hits that we get from posting on likes. So kind of the two ends of the spectrum are people that are doom scrolling and looking at all of the things that they just want to get really angry about, or conversely, posting and like elegantly curating the meals that they're eating and putting it up for the gram, right, for Instagram, or coming up with super kind of, a fake version of themselves to make them get or feel more elevated. So how does all this social media stuff play into personal and or physical and mental well-being?
Oh, huge. So one thing that I like to do with clients is actually have them write down how they're spending their time, and just do it on an average day. Start from when you wake up in the morning, and truly, how does your day go? And it's a great way to manage an overscheduled calendar and to learn how to set healthy boundaries. It's kind of a starting point. But what often happens is there are huge blocks of time suckers that involve binging Netflix or social media,
Right.
or, wherever you get your news source. And once those are identified, then you can start to assess, wow, I'm really blowing a lot of time here that I could be applying to other things.
Sure.
Now, I've had to make it a habit to not check my phone first thing in the morning and look on social media. And that was hard because I wanted to check messages and that kind of thing. And it wasn't necessarily posting, but then you just go down this rabbit hole. So it's so important to start your morning with a routine that works for you and get your day off to a good start. So mine, for example, is I'll walk the dog for an hour early in the morning, come back while I'm eating breakfast. I do like devotional time, meditation, that kind of thing. And then once that is done, then I will start my work day. So that's just what works for me. But I just notice that on those days where I reach for the phone or get on the computer right away, I get sucked down that rabbit hole. And then I just feel like I'm chasing my tail all day long. And it's very stressful. So that's one component of your question. The other is, if you are really struggling with having a negative mindset, social media or any type of news really needs to be managed. And I've spent a lot of time and effort removing people, or at least not engaging with certain people on social media. And you have to protect your energy. And when you're constantly bombarded with negativity, you're going to be negative. And then it's just going to fester and it will result in health problems, emotional problems, and you really have to set those boundaries. So I am very selective about who I engage with. I have a lot of followers on multiple social media channels, and I do think social media is great in a lot of ways, but I'm very selective about who I engage with. And if I start to see something that looks negative, I'm gone. Or if I notice somebody trying to post something, a response on something I've posted, and it's, I might send them a private message to say, look, I'm going to take this down for this reason, try to be polite about it. And sometimes you have to just block them. So, again, it's all protecting your energy.
Right. Well, and if you can make it a part of your mindfulness routine to also note where you're spending your time, and even to take a second after you've done a little bit of scrolling on Facebook, like, how do I feel? Right.
Oh,
And to
yes.
really think about it, and just to take it back to yourself, and to sometimes, and this might just be my woo-woo and some of the other things that I've listened to, but you got to separate your brain self, like what you're thinking about yourself, from what's actually happening. Right. So taking that step back, thinking outside of, okay, well, I just was on Facebook for 37 minutes. And, I looked at it, or like on my phone, on my iPhone, I get a screen time report every Sunday. Right.
Yep.
Holy crap. I was scrolling on Facebook a lot more this week than I normally did. Why was that? What happens? Or, specifically as you take everything, or that's I think why writing things down can be helpful, because it forces you out of yourself and puts it on paper, and it kind of objectively removes that space between you self and you, the things that you're doing. I think having the thought exercise of really separating what's you're experiencing with how you feel afterwards can be helpful.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And that practice is great for even what you're eating as well. How is something making you feel when you eat?
Right.
And if it makes you feel like crap, don't eat it.
Right. And just making a real solid mental note. Right. So I had a cheeseburger the other day. I was like, oh my God, I need a nap. It's like, well, that's telling you something, Dave. So
right. Doesn't mean don't ever have one, but just know that when you have one, you might feel this way. Maybe you have a smaller one, or that's just what's going to happen.
Or maybe just a bite, or maybe give up on the guilt of having food left on your plate when you're done eating, right?
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
But there are starving children in XYZ country. I'm sure most of us were raised that way, especially in our generation. And yeah, you cleaned your plate. Or what my parents instilled in me, it's like, if you truly are not hungry, we're not going to force you to eat everything on your plate, but don't expect to be getting any dessert.
Right.
Because if you're not hungry enough to eat your dinner, you're sure as heck not having dessert.
Right.
So I thought that was good.
Uh-huh.
But then they also were from the Depression era. So everything was a reward with food. So good report card. Oh, you had a great day, honey. Oh, congratulations. Here, let's go get a hot fudge sundae. Or, oh, you had a bad day. Oh, let's go get, candy bar at the grocery store or something like that. So that is instilling bad behavior. So in some ways it was great, but in other ways, yeah. So we become a product of our upbringing sometimes.
Right. Which I think brings us back to one of your nuggets, is that everything in moderation, right? So it's okay.
Yeah.
Reward yourself as long as you're not rewarding yourself 3 times a day with a hot fudge sundae.
Exactly.
3 times a week, maybe even. But
right.
Amazing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we close out, and this has been amazing. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see the feedback from all of the members of the Voyager U community and the Bizzyweb community that are going to be rewatching this. And I actually, John Arms, my co-host, he writes a lot about and talks a lot about snack sizing everything. So both literally and figuratively, you've done a wonderful job of helping us spell out small ways that we can make a big impact on our lives. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Big, somebody corners you on the street and asks you, if there's one thing that you wished everyone could do or would do, what would that be? Like, they just come at us like, Lisa, I'm struggling. What would be your go-to? Just here's my advice.
Give yourself some grace. You're human. And we tend to let that negative dialogue sabotage us and make us feel terrible about ourselves. Even if we appear really confident in one area of our life, we all have insecurities. And I guarantee that negative thought pattern impacts all of us in some way at some time. And to recognize that you're human, and mistakes are great learning experiences. I don't even like to say they're failures, because failure just is the ultimate negative. I believe every situation that is a challenge that maybe did not go as planned is an opportunity to learn something. And I'm not saying to be so insensitive that, oh, wow, if you're going through a really difficult time, you're going through a divorce or financially you're struggling, to just say, brush it off. No, that's hard. And it's okay to feel upset and frustrated or what have you. But there's a difference between allowing that to bury you and allowing that to motivate you to do better and to shift into a better situation. So there's always an opportunity to learn. So yes, validate your feelings, understand that you're human, give yourself some grace, and learn from your challenges.
Amazing. Perfect. And so giving yourself grace and maybe even giving yourself space to process can be incredibly helpful. Okay.
Absolutely.
I love that. Thank you. Last thing, are there places that you recommend people either subscribe, or favorite podcasts or favorite books, other than, of course, the soon to be From Burnout to Best Life by Lisa Hammett? What would you recommend people look at? Are there favorite podcasts or shows or other things that you dig?
Anything from Brene Brown is amazing. Dare to Lead. Yes. If you're in the corporate sector, you have got to be listening to Brene Brown. She is amazing at what she does. Atomic Habits by James Clear, one of my favorite books.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And he, you can sign up for his newsletter, and he doesn't like spam you. You get something maybe once a week. Sometimes it's maybe once a month. And it's just like little nuggets of information, and you can share it on your social media if you choose to, but it's really good, applicable tips. You know, I'm a huge proponent of positive intelligence, and it's an easy read, and it's very eye-opening to, you know, the different types of behaviors that we tend to hold on to. So that's by Shirzad Shameen. That's a good one. And then let's see, I just had a brain fart. There was another one. Bob Goff is always good too. He's a great storyteller. He does a lot. He's a Christian author, so I know it might not appeal to everybody, but he's a really good storyteller, and he just has a really unique perspective of dealing with some challenges. And yeah, he's really good.
Love that.
Really good. And then Dr. Henry Cloud, another one. Love Dr. Henry Cloud. You know, boundaries, huge fan of boundaries. So
one thing that that kind of popped in my head when you were talking about your morning routine is have you read The Miracle Morning? I think it's Hal Elrod.
I have not, but I have heard of it, and I hear it's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've had that on my Kindle like 3/4 of the way read for like 2.5 years. So
that's funny.
But perfect. Okay. Well, this has been immensely helpful. Lisa, tell us how the audience can keep in touch with you.
So they can go to my website, which is lisahammett.com. lisahammett.com. Super easy. You'll learn about my book on there. I do speaking engagements, and then just learn about me and different things. And you can also sign up, you know, for tips, and, you know, if you just want to have a conversation, you know, that's fine as well. So that would be probably the best way to get a hold of me. And I'm all over social media too. LinkedIn is probably my number one place. But I'm on Facebook a lot too, and Instagram. So
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Pam, thanks for the questions. Lisa, this has been immensely helpful, and I can't wait to see the results or what the audience reacts with, and to watch the comments. So thank you so much for the time. And I do want to give a quick promo. I think we actually just had a reschedule for next week. I believe that we are going to be having Andy Telejohn of Upsize Magazine on next week, and he's going to be talking through how to use publicity in order to grow your business. So if you're interested in that, be sure to dial in and check us out then. Until next time, this has been Office Hours with Dave and John. Not John this time, but thank you so much for hanging out, and this has been immensely helpful. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. This has been great. All right. Bye.